The clinking of cutlery and the soft hum of afternoon chatter filled the elegant café, nestled within the glistening skyline of Dubai. It was a place where the city's elite came to sip imported teas and seal quiet business deals. But on this particular day, that harmony was abruptly disrupted by the presence of a child whose eyes burned with urgency. Sahar al-Mazrouei, a billionaire with a cold reputation and an even colder heart, sat alone. Her table, reserved daily under her name, overlooked the artificial lagoon her conglomerate helped fund. Known as the Empress of Sands, Sahar had built her empire with ruthless precision. At 54, she held no heirs, no husband, no family, only power and a meticulously curated silence that no one dared to pierce. Her fortune surpassed entire nations' GDPs, yet her legacy was a void she had never wished to fill. A waiter gently placed a porcelain bowl of saffron-infused soup before her, its steam rising in golden ribbons. Sahar reached for her spoon, lifting it with the same poise she brought into boardrooms across continents. Then, like a thunderbolt out of nowhere, a shrill voice shattered the air. "Don't eat that!" All motion froze. Heads turned. A little girl no older than 10, in ragged clothing and dusty sneakers, stood with wide eyes and clenched fists. Her cheeks were flushed with fear, her breath heaving. The cafe manager rushed forward, his hand outstretched to remove her, but Sahar raised a single finger. "Wait." The girl's gaze met Sahar's, a look so intense it bypassed all the layers of armor the billionaire had spent decades assembling. For the first time in recent memory, Sahar did not command the room. She was merely a part of its stillness, a question suspended in time. "What did you say?" Sahar asked, her voice low, the spoon still hovering in midair. "There's something in the soup," the girl said. "Please don't eat it. I saw them put something in it." 1,000 thoughts stormed through Sahar's mind. Paranoia, coincidence, a trick. She studied the girl's eyes. No guile, no greed, just panic. The kind born not from ambition but from raw terror. "Who are you?" Sahar asked slowly. I can't say. Not here," the girl stammered. "They're watching." That was all it took. Sahar stood. The spoon dropped with a clink against the china, sending a ripple of disbelief through the cafe. Without another word, she turned to her guards and ordered an immediate withdrawal from the premises. 2 hours later, in a private clinic guarded by former intelligence officers, the soup was analyzed. Traces of thallium, a dose calibrated with terrifying precision. Enough to cause cardiac arrest within 10 minutes, leaving no visible trace unless specifically searched for. A rare poison. Expensive, not something a desperate kitchen worker could have acquired. This was personal. Sahar sat in her penthouse, the skyline stretching before her like a tapestry of secrets. For once, her thoughts weren't about mergers or hostile takeovers. They were about a girl whose name she didn't know, who had risked everything to save her. She had no family, no enemies within reach, or so she thought. Who had planned this? And more hauntingly, how did that child know? She summoned her private investigator, Khalid, ex-Mossad, surgical in his logic. "Find her," Sahar ordered. Khalid hesitated. "With respect, madam, if this was a professional attempt and she stopped it, her life might already be in danger. Then find her before they do." The search took weeks. The girl had vanished from the streets of Dubai like smoke in the desert wind. CCTV footage showed her slipping into alleyways, helping smaller children, distributing scraps of food. An orphan, clearly, but no record. She was a ghost in the machine. Until one day, Khalid arrived with a file. Weathered, sparse. A name, Maya, age, unknown. Estimated 9 to 10 years old. Found near the Rub al-Khali desert border 3 years ago. No known relatives. Taken to a state-run orphanage outside Sharjah. Escaped twice. Sahar's fingers trembled slightly as she touched the photograph paper-clipped. To the top, It was her wide eyes, that same haunting innocence wrapped in unspoken experience. "She's a runaway," Khalid explained. "Been on the streets for months, scavenges to survive, helps other kids. They call her the Whisper." "Why?" "She sees things, hears things, remembers everything. The street kids say she has the sight." Sahar said nothing for a long time. Finally, she stood. "Take me to her." The orphanage was a crumbling husk on the outskirts of civilization. Cement walls chipped with time, its corridors echoing with forgotten laughter. The matron trembled as she received Sahar, unsure whether to fear the billionaire's power or presence more. "She comes and goes," the woman confessed. "We can't keep her here." They found Maya in the back courtyard, reading a worn book to a blind toddler. She stopped when she saw Sahar, not with fear, but something more ancient, recognition. "I knew you'd come," she said softly. Sahar knelt, eye level with the child. "How did you know?" Maya looked away. "I heard them talking. In the back alley of the hotel. I was sleeping near the dumpsters. They said you were too powerful, that you didn't need to live anymore." "Who were they?" "I didn't see their faces, just shadows and shoes. But I remember the smell." "The smell?" "Cedar and tobacco. Expensive, like your boardroom when the old men visit." Sahar's blood ran cold. A plan began to form in her mind, but this was no longer about revenge. Something inside her had shifted. This child, this orphan, had no reason to help her, no gain, no reward. And yet, Maya had risked her life. Why? Was it the remnants of a conscious society had not yet beaten out of her? Or was it fate? Sahar returned home that night and sat in silence for hours, the city flickering beneath her. She'd spent her life building walls, building an empire. But in all her wealth, she had never owned something as priceless as that child's courage. The decision came like the sunrise. She would find out who tried to kill her. She would burn them from her life with precision. But first, she would protect the girl who had protected her. She would adopt Maya. And in doing so, perhaps for the first time in her life, she would create a legacy worth remembering. The vast halls of Sahar al-Mazrouei's estate in the heart of Dubai's exclusive Al-Barari district now echoed with a presence they had never known. Childlike laughter. Maya, the girl who had saved her life, now occupied a once unused wing of the mansion. But this was not a fairy tale of quick warmth and instant family. Sahar remained distant, poised, a fortress of emotional discipline. Yet something in her had changed. She found herself lingering at the edge of Maya's door, watching her fall asleep. The girl had brought an unexpected energy, a disruption Sahar had never known she needed. But as Sahar began to rebuild her trust in the world through Maya, danger lurked just beneath the polished surface of her empire. It started subtly, a rejected investment offer from a longtime associate, a confidential report that leaked, delays in her flagship project in Abu Dhabi. To the average observer, it was a businesswoman juggling a difficult quarter. To Sahar, it was a pattern, network of sabotage. The poison attempt had not been an isolated event. It was the first move in a silent coup. Then came the letter, typed, no fingerprints, slipped into the folds of her private ledger. "You should have eaten the soup." Her heart didn't race. It froze. There was only one circle that had access to her home, her food, her calendar. The same circle she had protected for decades. The Council of Investors, a brotherhood of 10 men, each a billionaire in his own right. Their alliance had built Al-Mazrouei Holdings into a dynasty, and chief among them was Lord Baran Al-Fayed, the man she once called her most trusted advisor, the Baron, elegant, charismatic, ruthless. With the bearing of old nobility and the heart of a serpent, he had been by her side since the founding of her first firm. He had guided her through mergers, held her secrets, and whispered wisdom like a priest in a confessional. Their history was a tapestry of power plays and shared victories. But when Sahar ordered a full background audit of her inner circle, something she had never dared before, the betrayal leapt off the screen like fire. Shell companies, offshore movements, an encrypted message traced to Bahrain's private server. She has no heir. Eliminate her, and the vote is ours. It wasn't just about money, it was about control. Sahar had been the glue binding the council. Her death would dissolve her shares. With no heir, the council could legally divide her empire amongst themselves. Unless Maya became the... Sahar summoned her legal team. "Draft an emergency testament," she said, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. "Effective immediately, Maya is to be declared my legal successor with full control upon my passing." Her lawyers protested. "Madam, she's 10 years old. The press will eat this alive. Let them," Sahar snapped. "She saved my life. She'll inherit it." But more than that, it was a shield. As long as Maya's name stood on those papers, killing Sahar no longer benefited the council. If anything happened to her now, Maya would become the most powerful child in the Middle East, and that terrified them. The response was immediate. Bahrain requested a private meeting. They met at a neutral location, an abandoned palace once used by royalty, far from the listening ears of modern skyscrapers. Bahrain arrived with his usual grace, a white keffiyeh draped over his shoulder, his smile sharp as a blade. "You've changed," he said, circling her like a wolf. "Children do that to people." "And you've stayed the same," Sahar replied. "Greed ages poorly on you, Bahrain." He laughed, low and dangerous. "You were always so dramatic. This isn't personal, it's evolution. You tried to poison me. You left me no choice. You dismantled my project in Qatar. You made enemies, Sahar. I merely accelerated the conclusion." Sahar didn't flinch. "You've lost. I have an heir now." For a brief second, Bahrain's mask slipped. His smile faltered. "You don't mean that street rat," he sneered. "She has more courage in her than you ever had," Sahar said coldly. "And more loyalty." Bahrain's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then I'll take her from you quietly. No poison, no blood, just influence. Money, fear. Children are easy to bend." The threat hit Sahar like ice to the chest, but she didn't show it. Instead, she stepped closer until their faces were inches apart. "If you touch her," she said, her voice almost tender, "I will unmake everything you are. You'll disappear so completely they won't even remember to miss you." Bahrain didn't respond. He only turned and walked away, his silence more ominous than any words. The next days were chaos. Anonymous threats, a drone spotted near Maya's school, an attempted bribe to one of her caretakers. Sahar moved Maya into a safe house guarded by ex-special forces, equipped with biometric locks and hidden panic rooms. But none of it comforted her, because fear had a new face now. The fear of losing someone not to betrayal, but to trust. The trust of a child who believed in her, who saw something worth saving in the coldest woman alive, and Sahar wasn't sure she deserved it. Then, one night, Maya asked her something that shattered her. "Why do they want to hurt you? Is it because you don't have a family?" Sahar's composure cracked. She knelt beside the girl, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "They want to hurt me, because I let them believe I had nothing to lose," she whispered. "But now, I have you." As Bahrain rallied his influence, Sahar prepared for war, not with bullets, but with legacy. She began dismantling joint ventures quietly, severing alliances, creating distance between her empire and the council. She offered buyouts, generous enough to appease some, terrifying enough to silence others. One by one, Bahrain's allies abandoned him. And when Sahar publicly announced Maya as her heir in a televised gala watched by millions across the Arab world, She did more than secure her future. She rewrote the rules of power. A child saved her. Now that child would reign. The announcement sent shockwaves through the financial elite. News outlets from London to Riyadh exploded with speculation, analysis, and disbelief. Billionaire appoints orphan as sole heir headlined every major paper. Some hailed it as an act of profound gratitude. Others branded it a reckless move, driven by emotional instability. But only a select few understood the implications. The Council of Investors was fragmenting. Bahran al-Fayed, once untouchable, now found his name, whispered in corridors as a relic of the old guard. But Sahar knew better. Cornered beasts don't cower, they strike, and Bahran was no exception. Sahar increased security around Maya, but it wasn't enough to quell the mounting dread. Something in her gut told her the game wasn't over. No, Bahran had gone underground, but he was still moving pieces. The poisoning attempt had failed, the legal route had collapsed. All that remained was chaos, and chaos arrived wrapped in tragedy. One morning, Sahar awoke to a blood-smeared message carved into the door of her private study. Inheritance must be earned. Next to it, a black coin, a rare artifact known among Bedouin tribes as the coin of courage. Legend claimed it was used in ancient trials of worth, presented only to those chosen to endure great peril for greater reward. It was no message. It was a dare. Sahar's instincts screamed. She sent Maya to a secret location abroad, shielded by layers of intermediaries and aliases. But in protecting the girl, she'd made a fatal oversight. She had underestimated her own people. 2 days later, one of her inner circle staff vanished. Alim, her logistics head, who had been with her since the early days of Al-Mazrouei Logistics, disappeared without a trace. His wife claimed he left for a retreat. His assistant received an email of resignation. But Sahar knew Alim too well. He would never leave without a word. It was a message. She began combing through her operations manually. It was an overwhelming task. Hundreds of subsidiaries, thousands of employees, and countless shell structures designed for discretion. That was when she noticed it. A facility, remote, unlisted in her main ledgers, tucked beneath layers of dummy corporations. Location: the empty quarter, Rub al-Khali, one of the most inhospitable deserts on Earth. She knew instantly. Bahran had buried something there. She arrived in disguise, with Khalid and 2 guards. The heat scorched the air like fire. The compound, camouflaged by dunes and artificial structures, looked like a forgotten relic of military ambition. What she found inside was beyond betrayal. A hidden lab, surveillance equipment, DNA sequencing, and files, thousands of them on orphans across the Middle East. Children with no records, children like Maya. Sahar's stomach turned. Bahran hadn't just planned to eliminate her, he had been creating a pipeline. Orphans, tested, profiled, some adopted, others trafficked into anonymity. And Maya, she had escaped the system, by accident or by design. That question would haunt Sahar, but one file stood out, Maya's only. Her original name wasn't Maya. It was Layla Bahran, daughter of a woman who had once sued Bahran for assault. The case was dismissed. The woman disappeared, records buried. But her child had been taken in by a nunnery near the Omani border, then trafficked into the very system Bahran now used. A dark suspicion flared in Sahar's heart. Had Maya been planted? Or worse, had she been meant as bait? Sahar didn't sleep that night. She sat in her tent beneath the desert stars, the coin of courage in her palm. If Maya truly was Bahran's daughter, then everything she had built, every step toward legacy, was tainted by a truth too cruel to accept, but then a whisper of memory. Please don't eat that. Those words, not calculated, not trained, not forced, spoken with pure, terrified instinct, a child's plea to protect life, not for gain, but because it was the right thing to do. She wasn't a spy, she was a survivor. And Sahar knew truth didn't matter as much as loyalty. Maya had chosen her. Now she would choose Maya. But war was no longer a possibility. It was inevitable. She returned to Dubai with a different fire in her soul. The press hounded her, pundits mocked her, and the council grew silent. But silence, Sahar knew, meant only one thing: planning. She beat them to it. She called a summit, an emergency meeting of shareholders, broadcast globally under the guise of corporate restructuring. There, on stage, she dropped the mask. She showed the files, the compound, the trafficking, the betrayal. She didn't name Bahrain. She didn't have to. The world would put it together on its own. But she ended with something even more potent than revenge. "I stand here not to beg for approval," she said, her voice unwavering, "but to declare that from this day forward, my empire belongs to the future, to the children we forget, to the orphans we discard, and to one girl above all who reminded me of courage when I had none left." The audience sat in stunned silence, then thunderous applause. But far away in the shadows of Morocco, Bahrain watched from a dimly lit room. Maya, it turns out, had been his insurance policy. Now, she was Sahar's weapon, and that changed everything. For most of her life, Sahar al-Mazrouei believed in control. Every detail, every dollar, every outcome had to be orchestrated. It was a belief forged in the fires of a brutal business world, where weakness was hunted and mercy was mistaken for incompetence. But now, her once sterile reality had been overrun by something uncontrollable, the unpredictable, emotional, profoundly human presence of a child. Maya, Layla Bahrain, as her hidden past revealed, had not only disrupted Sahar's empire, but unearthed the one thing Sahar had buried so deep it barely had shape anymore: vulnerability. Sahar did not speak of the discovery that Maya was Bahrain's daughter. Not to Khalid, not to Maya. The child remained blissfully unaware of the full depth of her origins. Sahar struggled nightly with the weight of that silence. Was she protecting Maya or herself? But time would not wait for introspection. The summit had marked a turning point. Donations and support began pouring in from global human rights organizations. Investors aligned with Sahar's vision. For the first time, the al-Mazrouei empire was seen not as an impenetrable tower of corporate ambition, but as a beacon of hope for abandoned children. And with hope came threats. One evening, as Sahar and Maya prepared for bed in a guarded estate in Amman, Jordan, the compound's security was breached. It was subtle, no alarms, no broken locks, but Sahar's instincts had grown sharp. She noticed it first. In the scent, cedar and tobacco, the very scent Maya had described, she immediately activated the silent lockdown. Maya was rushed into the panic room, the doors sealed behind steel and biometric scans. Sahar remained in the hallway, standing like a sentinel beneath the flickering chandelier. A voice emerged from the shadows. "You're protecting something that doesn't belong to you." It was not Bahrain. It was a man she recognized from old. Photographs, a cousin of Bahrain's, long thought exiled from the family after an embezzlement scandal. His name was Samir al-Fayed, cold, precise, and trained by foreign intelligence services. He stepped into the light with a calm fury. "She's his," he said. "She has his blood. She's our leverage." Sahar didn't blink. "She's mine. Not by law, not by legacy. You can give her comfort, but you cannot change her origin." "I don't need to," Sahar replied, hand inching toward the silent alarm in her ring. "I only need to protect her future." He moved then, quickly, too quickly, but Sahar had already pressed the trigger. Within seconds, the estate erupted in chaos. Guards swarmed, gunfire cracked like thunder. And Samir vanished as swiftly as he came, leaving only a cryptic message carved into the glass of a shattered window. Blood will reclaim its own. Maya slept through most of it, tucked away in reinforced safety. But children sense things, especially ones forged by survival. The next morning she asked, "Was he here for me?" Sahar hesitated. "Yes." "Because of where I come from?" "Yes." Maya didn't cry. She simply said, "Then let me stay where I am. I don't want to go back." Sahar reached out, brushing a tear from the corner of her own eye before it could fall. "You never will." But the weight of legacy lingered like smoke. A DNA test had confirmed what Sahar feared. Maya was unquestionably Baran's child. Legally, ethically, and in every courtroom that mattered, that link could be used against her. If exposed, it could nullify the adoption, reopen custody disputes, or worse, grant guardianship to Baran's surviving family members, and that risk was unacceptable. Sahar convened her legal team again. She began the process to declare Maya a naturalized al-Mazrouei through bloodline claims, posthumous recognition from her own deceased brother, and an unprecedented maneuver in UAE inheritance law. It was audacious, and it worked. Maya's records were rewritten. Her history now bore the lineage of Sahar's family, a masterstroke of both law and loyalty. And yet, with every document signed, Sahar felt a deeper unease. Was she honoring Maya or erasing her? The next turning point came unexpectedly. Maya, ever curious, had discovered an old trunk in the estate's archives. Inside were photographs, young Sahar, her brothers, her father, and a handwritten letter from her late brother Zayed, to Sahar never opened. In it, he spoke of regret, of wanting a child, of believing that legacy was more than profit, that perhaps in their pursuit of power they had lost something essential: connection. Reading those words cracked something open in Sahar. She had spent her life amputating emotion, surviving by severing what made her human. But Maya had changed that, not through blood, but through choice. So she chose too. She chose to give Maya everything, not just inheritance, but education, agency, and love. She brought in the world's best tutors, artists, historians, scientists, not to groom her into a business tool, but to let her dream beyond the confines of a boardroom. They traveled, under protection always, to Egypt, Morocco, the Swiss Alps, the coastlines of Portugal. And for the first time in Sahar's life, she saw the world not through risk analysis or economic metrics, but through wonder. She saw the Louvre not as an investment of culture, but as a temple of memory. She watched Maya marvel at sea turtles off the coast of Oman and weep quietly during a poetry recital in Paris. Sahar was changing, and the world could see it. But legacy, like all empires, attracts enemies. Baran may have vanished, but the Al Fayed family was regrouping, and now, with the turning tides of public opinion, were as merciless as desert winds. One moment, Sahar al-Mazrouei was a vision of progressive philanthropy, an iron-willed billionaire choosing compassion over tradition. The next, she was the central figure. In the media storm, spun with veiled threats and cultural outrage, anonymous sources began feeding the international press. Adopted heir, not who she seems. Baron's blood. Dark ties of the al-Mazrouei successor. Billionaire's empire. In crisis over orphan legacy, it was more than scandal. It was war. And Sahar knew who had opened the gates, the Al Fayed family, clawing their way back into power. Their whispers weren't aimed at legal courts or stockholders, they targeted hearts and minds. In the middle, East, where honor and lineage are not just matters of law but of identity, they were trying to frame Sahar as a traitor to her own legacy. And worse, painting Maya as a usurper. The world that had once celebrated Sahar's courage was now divided. Her allies grew nervous, Her enemies emboldened, invitations were rescinded, meetings cancelled, boardroom doors, once opened with reverence, now closed quietly behind her. For the first time, the empire trembled, not from external threat, but from cultural fracture. But Sahar refused to retreat. She summoned her core team to an undisclosed location in Istanbul, where she outlined her new strategy. Not corporate, not legal, narrative. The battle is not for control, she said. It's for truth. And if they want to drag our names into fire, then we will walk through it with our heads high. A new campaign launched the next day. Not defensive, defiant. It was called The Inheritance of Fire, a documentary-style series filmed by the renowned director Aisha Ghalib chronicled Maya's journey, not as a victim, not as a pawn, but as a child with courage, caught between power and legacy. It wasn't edited for pity. It was raw, fearless, filled with footage of Maya confronting her past, her nightmares, and her desire to forge her own identity. The series included interviews with former orphanage staff, street children Maya had once helped, even former employees of Bahrain's secret facilities who had defected and now spoke publicly. What emerged was a portrait not of scandal, but of survival, of strength, of a girl born into darkness who had chosen light. It went viral, across platforms, across continents. People who had once doubted began to question who were the real heirs of power, those born into it, or those who earned it through sacrifice. Suddenly, Sahar wasn't the villain, she was the guardian, and Maya, once painted as a shadowed legacy, became something new, a symbol. The streets of Dubai and Cairo began displaying murals of her likeness, eyes wide, gaze firm, beneath the caption, "She saw the poison. She chose to warn. She chose to protect." But symbols attract both devotion and destruction. On the eve of a gala meant to unveil Sahar's new initiative for orphan rehabilitation across the Gulf, a bomb threat was called into the venue. Guests evacuated, police swept the building, nothing. But the message was clear. Visibility came with a price, and it wasn't long before that price hit home. Maya was kidnapped. Despite every precaution, every layer of security, she vanished during a monitored school visit to a cultural center in Marrakesh. The escort team was neutralized with non-lethal gas, communications jammed. The attackers left behind no note, no demands, only a single object placed on Maya's desk at school. Another coin of courage. Sahar's world collapsed into silence, the calm before a storm she had spent her entire life preparing for. But no amount of wealth could shield her now, not from grief, not from rage, only action remained. She mobilized every asset she had, former Mossad, MI6 freelancers, Bedouin trackers, cyber intelligence from Tel Aviv to Ankara. She cut deals with rivals, paid bribes in 6 currencies. In less than 48 hours, she had reconstructed the route. Maya was in Libya, held in an abandoned oil refinery turned fortress, under the control of a rogue sect of the Al-Fayed family who had long been expelled from political society, but were now clawing back relevance through blood and symbolism. Their goal, to make Maya confess, on camera, that Sahar had coerced her, brainwashed her, used her to shame the Al-Fayed name, to reclaim honor. Sahar didn't wait. She flew to Tripoli with a private team, but this was no rescue mission. It was a declaration. As her team infiltrated the compound, Sahar herself recorded a global transmission from her aircraft, streamed across platforms. In it, she addressed the captors directly. "You may control buildings, armies, even bloodlines, but you will never control choice. Maya chose courage, you chose cowardice. And today, the world will see the difference. The extraction was violent, precise. 2 guards dead, 1 injured. Maya found, drugged, bruised, but alive." When Sahar saw her, she did not cry. She knelt, held her face, and said, You do not belong to them. You never did, and you never will. The footage of Maya's rescue aired within hours. The world erupted. Sahar's enemies retreated, shamed by public outcry. Diplomats issued apologies. Sanctions were proposed. And Maya, still trembling, stood beside Sahar at a press conference in Madrid and whispered, "I choose her." 3 words, and a lifetime of legacy changed forever. The return from Libya was not quiet. News of Maya's kidnapping and dramatic rescue painted Sahar al-Mazrouei as a heroine of uncompromising resolve. For a week, she dominated headlines, not as a billionaire, but as a mother. The global narrative had shifted from inheritance to protection, from scandal to sanctity. But power, once threatened, does not yield easily. It adapts, and so did the Al Fayed dynasty. Bahran, long unseen, issued his first public message in years. A pre-recorded statement broadcast through encrypted channels. His voice, colder than ever, addressed not Sahar directly, but the Arab elite. A child is not an empire, and a traitor cannot be a queen. He didn't have to say her name. The implication was enough. Sahar had become a political storm. International investors were now split between admiration and caution. Traditional patriarchs, especially in Gulf syndicates, began speaking openly of the dangers of matriarchal succession. What had once been personal now threatened to fracture alliances Sahar had nurtured for decades, and at the center of it all was Maya. No longer just a child. Now, a symbol of everything the old world feared and the new world demanded. But symbols must be sculpted, and so began the transformation of Maya al-Mazrouei. She would no longer hide. At just 11 years old, she was entered into an accelerated international curriculum designed by global experts. Sahar brought in leaders of state, philosophers, theologians, historians, all with one goal: to shape Maya into a sovereign of her own making. The public watched every step. Maya delivering speeches in perfect English, Arabic, and French, Maya touring orphanages. She was now funding through the Al-Mazrouei Foundation. Maya receiving a blessing from the Grand Mufti in Cairo and later attending a digital ethics summit in Berlin. She was no longer just the girl who saved. A billionaire. She was becoming the girl who would inherit the world. But Sahar knew that no amount of training could prepare Maya for what was coming next. A formal challenge filed in The Hague. Bahran's family, under the banner of ancestral custodianship, was demanding legal reassessment of Maya's adoption, citing heritage manipulation, fraud, and psychological coercion. They had evidence: the altered birth records, the name changes, the DNA erasure. The case was terrifyingly strong, and the court accepted it. Maya would be summoned to testify, to choose. Sahar was livid. "They're putting a child on trial for surviving," she told her lawyers. "This isn't justice, it's theater." But the law, even at its most monstrous, required obedience. The proceedings were set to take place in a private tribunal setting, but the public demanded transparency. The world wanted to see the girl at the center of it all. And Maya, now only months from turning 12, shocked them all when she made her decision. "I will speak," she said. "Let them hear my voice." The courtroom was a glass coliseum. Every media outlet streamed it live. Diplomats filled the back rows. Human rights activists sat beside oil barons. And at the heart of it, Sahar and Maya sat together, hand in hand. Bahran was absent. Of course he was. But his proxies, suits and scholars armed with ancient texts and legal scripture, spoke for him. They painted Sahar as a manipulator, a woman who had taken advantage of Maya's trauma for a political legacy. They called her dangerous, unstable, irresponsible. Then they called Maya, and the world held its breath. She approached the witness stand, alone, no notes, no teleprompter. She stood still, her eyes too old for her age, and began, "When I was a baby, my real father, Baran al-Fayed, gave me to people who forgot I existed. I don't remember his voice. I don't know what his hands feel like. All I know is what he didn't do." She paused. "Then one day, I saw a woman in a café. Powerful, cold. She could have ignored me, but she didn't. She listened. A murmur rippled through the crowd. She didn't take me. I chose her. Every day since, I keep choosing her. Not because she's rich, because she's the only one who ever asked me who I wanted to be." She looked directly into the cameras. "I don't want to be a pawn or a princess. I want to be someone who protects, not owns. I want to build, not burn. If that's not what a real heir should do, then maybe it's time we changed what inheritance means." Silence, then tears, then thunder. The tribunal ruled in Sahar's favor. Maya's adoption was upheld, and the challenge dismissed. But the trial had done more than confirm legality. It had awakened loyalty. Middle Eastern youth, especially girls, rallied to Maya's image. Movements were born in her name. The Maya Fund for Forgotten Girls tripled in donations. Western governments offered partnerships. Nobel nominations were whispered. And Sahar watched, always at a distance, as the girl she once thought. Victory, Sahar al-Mazrouei had learned, was not a finish line. It was a debt, and Maya, for all her composure and eloquence, was beginning to feel its weight. With the court victory, the world crowned her, not only the heir of a billion-dollar empire, but the soul of a new generation. Cameras followed her, crowds chanted her name, political figures sought her endorsement. The girl who once whispered a warning in a cafe was now being molded into the voice of a continent. But Sahar saw the shadows behind the spotlight. Maya had begun to speak less during private moments. Her sketches, once filled with sun and sea, now depicted cities in ruins, faces without eyes, crowns melting into fire. She smiled for the world, but her nights were filled with silent tears and locked doors. "She's burning," Sahar whispered to Khalid one night. "The world loves her, but they are consuming her." Maya's innocence had not been lost in a single blow, but worn away like stone underwater, day after day, headline after headline. And there was nothing Sahar could offer to restore it. Not even love, especially not love. The warning signs intensified. Maya fainted during a press appearance in Doha. She lashed out at a bodyguard who touched her shoulder too suddenly. She stopped eating desserts, claiming she was tired of sweetness. A child's cryptic language, a queen's exhaustion, and Sahar felt helpless. For the first time, she questioned if giving Maya the world was the same as taking her childhood. She considered stepping back, dissolving her titles, shielding Maya from the public eye, even relocating to a country that didn't know their names. But destiny, once ignited, does not dim quietly. A secret letter arrived by hand. No postage, no return address. Inside was a photograph, grainy, old of Sahar as a teenager holding a child. Maya, the handwriting on the back chilled her blood. "You were always meant to find her. But will you still choose her now that you know everything?" Sahar collapsed into the chair. The truth she had buried even from herself returned with cruel clarity. Maya had not stumbled into her life. She had been part of it all along. Flashback. 19 years ago, Sahar, then only 35, had suffered. A brief breakdown after a failed acquisition left hundreds unemployed. She had vanished from the public eye for a month, hiding in a remote villa near Salalah. The staff, discreet and forgettable, had brought her a child to keep her company, a baby from a local shelter, abandoned days earlier. The infant had soothed something in her, briefly. She had named her Layla. For 3 weeks, she held her, fed her, hummed songs from her childhood. Then she returned to business. The baby had been taken back. She never asked again. Until now, until this photograph proved the impossible. Maya wasn't just Baron's daughter. She was also hers. The implications were staggering, not biologically but emotionally. Maya was the child Sahar had once cradled and forgotten, the child who, against all odds, had returned. Fate, it seemed, was not just a thread. It was a circle, a loop that demanded closure. But how could she tell Maya? Would it comfort her or destroy her? Would it feel like truth or another manipulation? Sahar delayed. The Foundation's 10th anniversary gala loomed, and Maya insisted on attending. She prepared a speech, practiced her tone, even requested to sing a poem, something she had written in private, something no one had heard. On the night of the event, the world watched as Maya walked onto the stage, her white robe embroidered with gold, her hair crowned with jasmine. But before she could speak, a gunshot cracked through the silence. Chaos erupted, security scrambled, Maya fell, blood screams. Sahar rushed forward, her knees tearing against the marble floor, cradling Maya in her arms like she had once done 2 decades before. "No," she whispered, "not like this." Another shot. This time, it missed. Khalid tackled the shooter, a lone radical with ties to a shadow cell loyal to Bahrain's ideological legacy. He screamed one sentence before they silenced him. "The crown is cursed." Maya survived, but barely. The bullet had fractured a rib and missed her lung by a whisper. The recovery was slow, filled with pain, both physical and invisible. And during those long nights in the hospital, Sahar finally told her everything. The villa, the baby, the photograph, the truth. Maya listened, didn't speak for a long time, then said, "I knew." Sahar blinked. "You, what?" "I remembered the song. You used to hum it. I never forgot." Tears spilled down Sahar's face. "And you still chose me." "I always did." That moment became legend. The girl who saved a billionaire, the queen who saved the child, the mother who became the heir. But the crown, Maya knew now, was not gold or empire. It was grief, resilience, truth, and the willingness to burn so others could live. The heir of ashes, the world moved on, but Maya would never be the same. The shooting at the gala had crystallized one truth more clearly than any title, any speech, or any inheritance. She was no longer a child of chance. She was a target, a leader, a force. And with that, she bore not just the empire of Sahar al-Mazrouei, but the ghosts of everything that empire had built and buried. Her recovery was long. Physical wounds healed quickly. Emotional ones, however, left no scar to mark where. The damage began. She stopped drawing altogether, refused interviews, barely spoke for weeks, except to Sahar. They spent long hours together on the balcony of the Al-Mazrouei estate in Granada, where Sahar had fled with her during recovery. It was a place untouched by business, a sanctuary built of red stone and olive trees. Here, Sahar told her stories, some true, others fables, but always ones with one clear message. Pain does not define us. Choice does. Maya listened, not with the wide-eyed wonder of a child, but with the focused stillness of a monarch. She was changing, not hardening, but becoming flame. It began subtly. She reinstated her public presence, not with fanfare, but with precision. No red carpets, no declarations. She returned to the world like a whisper returned to a cathedral. Her first action, a visit to the orphanage in Sharjah, where she had once hidden from the world. Without cameras, without media. She walked the halls, barefoot, sat on the cracked tiles, listened to the stories of children who had no names, no future, no protector. When she returned to Dubai, she launched the Nameless Initiative, a legal framework powered by Al-Mazrouei Holdings to create immutable identities and access to education, shelter, and citizenship for undocumented orphans across the Middle East and North Africa. It was her first decree as the de facto head of the foundation. It would not be her last. The aristocracy resisted, as expected. A coalition of old families in Qatar and Kuwait released a formal petition to strip Maya of her authority, citing juvenile recklessness and cultural overreach. But this time, Sahar didn't fight, Maya did. She called a private symposium. No media, just leaders, patriarchs, matriarchs, emirs, business magnates. There she stood, not as a child, not even as an heir, but as something terrifyingly rare. A truth speaker in a room of strategists. You built dynasties with secrets, she told them, but I was built from them. I am the future, not because I want to be, but because you refuse to change. And if you continue to defend blood over worth, then your children will inherit kingdoms of ash. She didn't shout, she didn't cry. She simply finished and left the room. Half the coalition dissolved its petition by the next morning, but power, like fire, demands fuel, and every flame Maya lit revealed another chamber of Sahar's past. It was in the ruins of Bahran's abandoned estate in Tangier that they found it. A secret vault, sealed beneath stone and reinforced steel. Inside, hundreds of files, not of money, not of crimes, of experiments. Records of children trafficked across borders, their identities scrubbed and rewritten, medical procedures, neural testing, behavioral programming. Bahran's empire had not merely been a pipeline of exploitation, it had been a lab, and Maya had been part of it. One file detailed a Layla B exposed to early sensory deprivation as part of a behavioral study. She had been flagged as unusually empathetic under threat stimuli. Sahar nearly fainted reading it. Not only had Bahran known who Maya was, he had designed her survival, but something had gone wrong. Maya had broken the pattern. She had not been conditioned into obedience. She had chosen resistance. That choice had changed everything. Back in Dubai, Sahar confronted the truth in the only way she knew how, with legacy. She summoned every legal entity she controlled and did the unthinkable. She announced her full retirement, effective immediately. All operational power, voting rights, and control of Al Mazrouei Holdings would transfer to Maya, now legally recognized under a special consortium clause as a dynastic steward. A role never before used, created for succession beyond bloodline. The board was stunned. Journalists erupted. The markets trembled. But Maya remained still. She walked into the boardroom the next day, not to celebrate, but to speak. "We will not burn the empire," she said. "We will forge it again, not for profit, for protection. Our future will not be a fortress, it will be a refuge." And so began the restructuring. Entire divisions of the company pivoted to humanitarian tech, climate recovery, digital education for refugee populations. Private jets were sold. Palaces converted into shelters. Board members who resisted were bought out, replaced with social architects and futurists. The Al Mazrouei empire was no longer just powerful. It was principled and dangerous because it no longer feared being destroyed. It had already been ashes. In private, Sahar and Maya sat by the sea one night, a fire crackling between them. The stars above the Arabian Gulf glimmered like secrets waiting to be revealed. "You've done what I never could," Sahar said, voice breaking. Maya turned to her, eyes soft. "You gave me the fire." Sahar shook her head. "No, you were the fire. I just finally saw it." And in that moment, the billionaire who had once feared love and the orphan who had once feared being forgotten sat side by side, not as mother and daughter, not as queen and heir, but as survivors of a system of betrayal, of destiny. And as the waves whispered ashore, one truth remained unshakable. Courage, in the end, is not a coin to be spent. It is a legacy to be lived. When the dust settled, when the cameras pulled away and the contracts were signed, all that remained was the sound of wind moving through the towers of a reimagined empire. An empire not born of inheritance, but of choice, of a forgotten girl, and of a woman who had forgotten how to love. Sahar Al Mazrouei built fortunes, crushed enemies, and survived poisons hidden in silver spoons. But none of that prepared her for the challenge of loving someone who reminded her what it meant to lose everything, except courage and Maya. She never wanted to be a symbol, she just wanted someone to listen. And when her voice rang out for the first time, whispering, "Don't eat that," she didn't just save a life, she ignited a legacy. An entire empire was reborn, not from greed, but from gratitude, not from blood, but from truth. And now, looking out over the world she helped reshape, Maya teaches us something most people will never understand. That real power isn't in destroying, it's in protecting, not in ruling, but in transforming, and above all, in choosing to choose what's right, even when no one is watching. Now we want to hear from you. Do you believe courage can be inherited? Have you ever been saved by someone the world overlooked? Would you protect someone the world told you to abandon? Share your truth in the comments. This story doesn't end here. It lives on in every choice, in every silence you decide to break, and in every empire you dare to build with heart.